There is a moment in life when a call that no one else can hear rises from the depths of the soul. It does not arrive with thunder or signs in the sky, but like a quiet breeze passing through the mind, touching the place you thought had long fallen asleep. In the readings I have done, I have noticed a current of energy operating beyond human calculation, like an unseen hand, touching the fragments of life, arranging every detail with subtlety. And I understood that this is the moment when a sacred call is being sent. When that hand touches, you cannot mistake it, for a strange awakening sensation sweeps through you, and urging without reason, as if your soul has received a signal from a higher realm of light. Many confuse it with fleeting emotions, with unease, with vague longing. But when you go deeper, you will realize it is a different vibration. A door slightly opening to lead you into a new chapter of life. The invisible call does not seek those who are asleep in false satisfaction. It only resounds for souls that have matured, that have passed through many losses and are now ready to listen. When I was young, I often asked why certain events happened in rapid succession without a clear reason. Why doors suddenly closed just when we thought we had found a place to stand? But then in moments of deep prayer, I was shown that this was the way God arranged, so that the soul would not cling to small things, for a greater blessing had been prepared beforehand. I once said that everything has a cause rooted in the soul, and when you feel a force difficult to explain leading you, it is not an illusion. It is the reminder that it is time to leave the old place. Many, when they first receive the signal, fall into confusion. They search for proof. They want physical signs to confirm, but the sacred call does not come in that way. It comes like intuition, flaring in the heart, like a dream repeating many times, like a strange coincidence that makes you pause and ask yourself, is this chance or is it a plan written in the universe? I have seen in many souls that the activation of the unseen hand always comes with a cleansing. The things you cling to begin to tremble, not to take them away, but to release, for a vessel full of residue cannot hold clear water. God cannot place in your hands something great if your hands are still clutching fragments of yesterday. That is why you will feel movement, sometimes loss, sometimes familiar things falling away, and you think you have been abandoned. But in truth, you are being purified to receive. Remember that the invisible call does not come to frighten. It comes to affirm that you are ready, that your soul has reached the frequency to recognize, like an instrument tuned to the right pitch and now able to resonate in the orchestra of the universe. I have noted that in the moment the soul begins to answer the call, you will see two currents existing together, one from fear holding you back and one from urging, pushing you forward. And in that tension, your decision reveals the full nature of faith. If you return to what is familiar, the call will fall silent and wait for another time. But if you choose to step forward, you begin a journey with no way back. I want you to know that in that moment you are not alone. For many generations have gone through it. Many souls have heard and have answered. The words in Scripture remind us, I will never leave you nor forsake you. And that is a truth beyond all human feeling. Even when you do not understand, the presence is still beside you, guiding you step by step. When you hear the invisible call, believe that you have been chosen not because you are better than others, but because your soul has reached the time to rise to a higher plane. Do not wait for proof outside. Recognize the sign in your own soul, for it is there the call resounds, and once you hear it, life will never be the same, for you have stepped into the current of what has been destined since the beginning. Have you ever sat quietly in the middle of the night with no sound around you, Yet inside you felt something moving, like a hidden flame rising from the deepest part of the soul. It is not the anxiety of the mind, nor is it a random feeling, but the inner activation, a resonant vibration from the sacred realm awakening you from a long slumber. And I have seen in many readings that when this moment happens, no one can deny it, because it comes with a strange awareness, as if you have just woken up from a sleep without knowing how long you had been asleep. The inner activation does not come through reason. It comes through a knowing with no external proof yet clearer than any proof you have ever held. You begin to see the familiar suddenly become unfamiliar. The habits that once made you comfortable now bring only suffocation, and even the closest relationships no longer satisfy the deep urging rising within you. This is not by chance, but a sign that your soul is opening to a new chapter, and to step into it, you must release what is old. I ask you, do you dare to trust that call, or will you dismiss it and think it is only illusion? For this is the place where the path divides, where a small choice can shape the whole destiny that follows. Many fear when this activation appears, because it feels like an inner rebellion, breaking the false peace they have built for so long. But I tell you, it is not destruction. It is the preparation for you to meet yourself at the deepest level, where no mask remains. When the energy of inner activation rises, you may find yourself waking in the night with an unexplainable excitement. You may dream the same dreams repeatedly. You may unexpectedly come across words, songs, signs that make your heart tremble. None of these are accidents, but the universe responding to confirm that you have heard correctly. In moments of deep prayer, I see the image of souls entering this stage like seeds underground. They begin to split their shells, tiny roots pushing out in search of water. Outwardly, nothing seems to change, but inside it is a revolution for survival. You are the same. Outwardly, life may still appear unchanged, but inside you are transforming each day, and that very change will soon break the surface to reveal new life. So, are you feeling this within yourself? Do you sense an unnameable longing, an urging? You cannot keep silent forever. I tell you that if you are feeling it, you have entered the stage of activation, and your task is to trust it, not with eyes that see, but with a heart that knows. Do not fear confusion. Do not worry that you are lost, because every disorder is only dust covering. Behind it is an orderly unfolding. In the Akashic records, I have seen many souls step into this threshold thousands of years ago. They too were confused. They too doubted. But in the end, they became witnesses of the truth, that every inner activation is a signal of a great blessing to come. Do not underestimate those quiet stirrings, for they are the hidden currents shaping your future. The inner activation will make your mind more sensitive to things you once overlooked. You will realize that meaningless conversations feel empty, while a simple sentence can move you deeply. You will see that the space around you can carry distinct energy, and you will begin to long for purity in your words, actions, and thoughts. I emphasize that this is an extremely important stage, because if you trust and follow it, you will step into a new orbit. But if you reject it, you will sink back into the old cycle and may lose many more years, even many lifetimes, before returning to this starting point. So let me ask you again, when inside you a call is rising, will you choose silence and ignore it? Or will you dare to step forward and say, yes, I am ready? When you choose to step, the entire universe will join forces to open the way for you. And you will see proof little by little, not because you force it, but because you have aligned with a plan written from the beginning. Trust and let the inner activation be the confirmation that you are never alone, for the unseen hand is still guiding you to what you were always destined to receive. When the inner activation has begun, the next sign always appears in a form that surprises and sometimes pains people. It is that the familiar doors begin to close one after another. Opportunities once thought stable suddenly vanish. Relationships once close abruptly drift away. Plans carefully laid out become ineffective. On the surface of life, this looks like loss or failure. But in the depths of the soul, it is an inevitable process of purification. Nothing happens without purpose, for God does not place new blessings into a vessel already full. Each closed door is a confirmation that the old path has fulfilled its function and is no longer suitable to lift you to the next level. You will see this operation clearly in every detail, like a close friend who once shared everything, suddenly falling silent and disappearing from your life, like a job once thought secure, suddenly facing upheaval, or like a place that once gave safety, now becoming cramped and no longer fitting. If you look only with physical eyes, you will see chaos. But if you look with the eyes of the soul, you will realize that this arrangement is to release you from bonds that no longer align with the destiny awaiting you. In many readings, I have recognized a repeated truth, that every closure comes with another door opening in a place you had not yet turned your gaze. The timing of the door closing is often chosen very precisely so that you cannot delay, so that you cannot continue to cling to what is only a shadow of the past. It is this suddenness that is strong enough to shake you from familiarity, because if left to your decision, you would choose safety and postpone change. God knows that false safety often becomes invisible chains, and only when it collapses will you step into the unknown. So do not think a closed door is punishment. It is protection. It is preparation. It is the way God removes from your hands what would prevent you from receiving the greater blessing. When someone you trust turns away, it is the time you learn to place your trust in Him instead of people. When a plan collapses, it is the time you learn to rely on the guidance of the soul instead of the clever calculations of the mind. When a support disappears, it is the time you realize you are called to stand firm by divine upholding. In many cases, the closing doors also expose truths you never dared face. A friendship may have been hollow for a long time. A job may have drained your life. A habit may have limited your growth, yet you maintain them because of familiarity. When these things are taken away, you finally see their true value. In reality, nothing is truly lost. Only what no longer fits is cleared away to make room for what is right. I have witnessed many souls go through this stage. At first they felt lonely, disoriented, but later they realized that each loss had prepared them to receive something beyond imagination. A job that ended led to a wide new career path. A broken relationship opened the way for a deep soul connection. A shattered dream cleared the way for a true calling. All of it was an arrangement without error. What makes it hardest for many to accept is the silence of this stage. You see the door close, but not yet the new door open. You see loss, but not yet compensation. And in that gap, your faith is tested. This is where you are taught to stand firm, not by what the eyes see, but by the knowing that a greater force is at work. No emptiness exists to make you suffer. That emptiness is the very space where new blessings are sown, just as soil must be cleared of weeds before seeds are planted. Your soul, too, must be freed before receiving, and if you look closely, you will see that closures are never random. They always happen in places where you had sensed depletion, but you ignored it. They always arrive like a bell, so that you can no longer pretend everything is fine. And when it comes, instead of resisting, recognize that it is divine intervention. The sooner you accept, the sooner you step into the new rhythm, the more tightly you cling, the more you feel pain. Yet that pain itself is also a teacher. showing you that there is nothing left to hold. Closure is part of the breath of the universe. Inhaling and exhaling, beginning and ending, dying and being reborn. No door closes without another door opening. And no loss exists without leading to a greater grace. When you understand this, you will no longer seek closure with fearful eyes, but with gratitude, because you know that the unseen hand is still writing your story, and every ending is only the beginning of a new chapter you never dared to imagine. The sacred loneliness is unlike any form of loneliness that people usually experience. It is not simply the absence of friends or the loss of a relationship, but a deliberately arranged state in which the soul is pulled out of the noise and placed into an empty space where there is nothing to cling to except the divine presence itself. When the familiar doors close, when you realize no one is walking with you on the new path, that is when the sacred loneliness begins to appear. Many fear it, believing they have been abandoned, but the truth is the opposite. This is the stage where you are placed in a chamber of training, a place where every outside noise is silenced so that you may hear the whisper of God within. In many readings, I have seen clearly the image of souls entering this stage, their faces heavy with solitude, yet around them was a gentle light, as if the entire host of angels stood at the edge, waiting for the moment the soul would open and recognize the sacred loneliness is not empty, it is full of presence, but because the physical eyes cannot see it, people often confuse it with abandonment. In reality, it is precisely in this separation that you are able to see your true nature, no longer covered by the opinions of others, no longer shaped by social agreement. In that silence, the great questions begin to rise. Who am I? What am I called to do? What is the truth I must live? This is the stage where the soul is purified of dependence, for if you continue to rely on people to find value and definition, you will never hear the original voice from the source. The sacred loneliness is like being led into the desert, not to be forsaken, but to be trained. Scripture recalls the 40 years Israel wandered in the wilderness, the 40 days Jesus was tested in the desert. All of these are images of this process. In the dryness, one is forced to search for deeper water, no longer water from the ordinary well, but the stream from within the soul, the stream that only the sacred loneliness compels you to uncover. You will notice that in this stage, many things once important suddenly become meaningless. Shallow conversations no longer attract you. Social gatherings become tiring because your soul has been drawn into another frequency, and all the noise now feels like a distant echo. Silence at this point is no longer the enemy. It becomes the teacher. It opens the door into the inner life. Sometimes you will go through long nights that seem endless with no one beside you, no words of comfort, only yourself facing the emptiness. And in that place you begin to feel that you are not alone. There is a gentle presence covering you, not showy, not loud, but so strong that you know without it you would have fallen. That is the sacred loneliness. It turns isolation into communion, emptiness into fullness. In those quiet moments, you will begin to see clearly the coverings that have long remained, the false beliefs, the illusions about yourself, the wounds yet unhealed. It is separation from others that gives you the chance to see them without disguise. And when you bravely face them, the light of truth seeps in, healing and transforming you. The sacred loneliness is also where you learn that your worth does not come from external recognition, but from alignment with the source. You realize that even when no one applauds you, you still have value. Even when no one understands, you still have meaning, because that meaning was not given by society, but placed within you by the Creator. From the beginning, when you walk through this stage, you become different. No longer shaken by praise or criticism, no longer easily running with the crowd. For you have heard a voice deeper and truer than all, the voice of the soul connected to God. It is precisely through the sacred loneliness that you are prepared to step into the next stage, where you are no longer merely a follower of others, but one who stands firm in faith, even when no one accompanies you. You will carry a new strength, a peace that does not come from circumstances, a confidence not from achievement, but from knowing that you and God have never been apart. The sacred loneliness is a grace in disguise, a gift clothed in challenge, and only those who pass through it with open eyes see its hidden beauty. When you have gone through it, you will no longer see loneliness as the enemy, but as a sacred space where you were remade, where you once heard the clearest call from the unseen realm, and where you knew with certainty that you had never been abandoned. You had only been set apart to prepare for the greatness to come. The trials come right after the sacred loneliness has quieted every noise. They are not punishment, but the measure of endurance of the inner current of life, the way the sacred realm establishes a new rhythm for body, for mind, for soul, so that you may hold what is about to be given. I have seen in many readings that trials always move through three dimensions: body, mind, and spirit. And each dimension has its own gateways to enter, its own problems to solve. But the conclusion of them all is only one: whether you choose harmony with the divine will or return to the habits of the old self. On the dimension of the body, you may begin to feel tired without reason. Your sleep shifts. Your appetite changes. Things that once brought ease now feel heavy. This is when the body is retuning its frequency to align with the new rhythm of the soul. The endocrine centers, like signal stations at once: pituitary, pineal, thyroid, adrenal, sexual, orchestrate a silent music the mind cannot easily grasp with reasoning. And if you resist by forcing in more stimulation, you will prolong the dizziness of transition. But if you listen, adjust your breathing, simplify food, bathe in early sunlight, release the shoulders, drink enough water, you will realize the body has its own wisdom and is ready to become a worthy vessel for light. On the dimension of the mind, trials arrive as doubt, as impulsive urges to return to the old path, as desire to prove yourself before others, as habit of comparison and reaction. You will see old stories driving emotions, like scratches on a record. And each time the mind is pulled into spirals of justification, blame, or avoidance, the lesson here is to build a habit of silence at the start and close of the day. In the morning, set a clear intention. Today, I choose to be faithful in the smallest thing. In the evening review, what made me fall out of rhythm, I will correct it with one concrete act tomorrow. When you replace unconscious loops with conscious loops, the mind has less chance to scheme against the soul. On the dimension of spirit, trials seem the harshest because they often wear the silence of heaven. Not strong signals, no clear vibrations, no overflowing feelings, only a wide space like a desert. And the question, will you keep walking when you cannot feel the support? Here, faith is proven not by emotion but by choice. You choose surrender each morning. You choose gratitude each evening. You choose to serve someone in the day. That is the signal sent upward that you trust in him more than in your feelings. Trials also come through people beside you: a friend suddenly misunderstanding your goodwill, a relative criticizing the path you take, a colleague competing unfairly. Here the soul is asked whether you will react as before, whether you will retaliate with the same energy, or whether you will stand firm in gentle strength, with boundaries, speak truth calmly, and continue your work. Because what you are learning is to hold your vibration from falling into opposition when pressure rises. That is the clear mark of a mature soul Another trial lies in time. Everything moves slower than expected. Promises remain unseen. Ideas lack ground to unfold. Money narrows. This is when the sacred realm measures your consistency. Whether you keep sowing small acts, whether you fulfill present duties with the best quality, whether you keep a notebook of daily lessons, whether you set aside a portion of income for sharing and service. In the readings, I clearly see the law. When one remains faithful in small things, the flow opens in greater things. And delay is no longer obstacle, but filter that refines intention. There is also a type of trial wearing the face of temptation, a shortcut promising instant success, an opportunity for display to earn applause, an invitation to shift slightly from core values. This is when you learn the hidden lesson. What is right is seldom loud. What is lasting seldom attracts the crowd immediately. Choose the quiet part of the room. Let results speak instead of advertisement. Protect the seed from strong winds until the roots are deep. During this process, dreams and synchronicities still come like margin notes. You may write them each morning. Dismiss the meaningless. Keep the luminous. Do not turn them into fortune-telling. See them as harmony lines to the main melody, which is inner discipline. For some, trials touch finance. When resources shrink, two lessons must be learned: the lesson of order and the lesson of trust. Order means recording expenses, abandoning wasteful habits, prioritizing honorable debt repayment, and nurturing skills that create true value. Trust means not letting fear make you stingy with goodness. A small portion given as gratitude opens doors that calculation cannot. For many souls, family and old friends become mirrors of trial. Words touching old wounds, repeating scenarios. Here the lesson is active forgiveness and healthy boundaries. You do not need to prove. You do not need to win an argument. Let your new life clarify your choice. On a deeper level, trial is the invitation to return to the reason. Why are you doing this? For recognition or for faithfulness to the call. If for recognition, you will break when no applause comes. If for the call, you will continue, even if no one notices. And in that moment, the heavenly rhythm matches yours, and what is needed will come. I have seen many souls fall in trial and then rise stronger, because failure, while learning, is not condemnation. It is an essential part of training. The key is to return, correct small but steady, ask for help when needed, continue the next step instead of punishing yourself with guilt. When you pass through a cycle of trial, you will notice a clear sign, not that everything outside flows easily, but that inside you there is a steady peace, not dependent on outcome. You hear simple guidance for today and do it. Then tomorrow receive new guidance and do that. This is the life of one walking in the light, not hurried, not boastful, not despairing, yet not careless, steady like a warbet, quiet like an underground stream. The trials do not make you smaller. They make you empty where you must be empty and full where you must be full. They take ashes from your hands and place seeds there. They cut the cord tying you to the past and connect you to the calling. And in the end, you understand a simple truth. The sacred realm is not punishing you. It is preparing you. And every time you choose gentleness instead of retaliation, faithfulness instead of haste, service instead of display, you have ascended another step of trial to become one able to hold the good that will be given to you. The signals of coincidence often come like small scattered pieces along the journey. They appear exactly when you need them most, to remind you that you are not walking in blind darkness, but are being guided by an unseen hand. More than a few people have told me that they saw repeating numbers on clocks or signs, that they happened to hear a song just when their mind was in turmoil, that they met an old friend after many years, right? When they were thinking about an important decision, for a moment they thought it was only chance, but then they sensed a thread connecting all events. And I affirm that this is how the universe speaks to the soul through coincidences that seem small but carry the power of direction. In the readings, I have clearly seen that these signals are not random. They are arranged in the larger structure of time and space so that the soul can receive the necessary confirmation. They do not make decisions for you, but they strengthen the faith that you are on the right path. When a door has closed and trials weigh heavily, your mind easily falls into doubt. And that is when coincidences appear as signs that you are still being seen, that you are not abandoned. They may come in the form of a recurring dream where the same image returns many times as a message you must decode. They may also come in the form of words casually spoken by a stranger that touch exactly the concern you are carrying. A book accidentally falls off the shelf, opening to the very passage that explains what you are seeking. A symbol repeats itself on your path until you stop to reflect. This is precisely how the sacred realm sends rhythm, so that your steps stay aligned with the plan woven beforehand. Some skeptics argue that it is only selective attention of the mind, but the truth is that the mind can only select what has already been sown into space. Signals do not appear out of nowhere without an arranging hand. The difference lies in whether you are sharp enough to notice. In this stage, coincidence is not merely the play of fate. It is a lesson in attention, for a mature soul does not overlook small details. When you pay attention, you begin to see invisible connections between event and event, between person and person, and realize that you are not walking in chaos, but in a deep order. That order is not always comfortable, but it always has purpose. One of the clearest signals many encounter is repeating numbers such as 1, 1, 1, 1, or 3, 3, 3. This is not superstition, but the mathematical language of the universe, the way it reminds you to pause and become aware of the present, that what you are thinking or deciding is in alignment with guidance from above. Prophetic dreams are also an important channel, sometimes as warning, sometimes as encouragement, but always designed to reach the place reason cannot easily reach. You may see a simple image repeat many times, like a bird in flight, a path, a source of light, and when you wake you feel relief. That is the sign that you are being reassured. Or you may dream of returning to an old place, reminding you that something unfinished must be resolved before you move into a new chapter. Signals of coincidence can also come through synchronicity with others. You are thinking of someone, and they send a message or call. You are seeking advice and overhear a conversation about the very issue. None of it is random. This is the affirmation that you and others are being woven into the same network where threads cross at the right moment to bring lessons or assistance. What matters is not to fall into obsession, searching for signals everywhere, for their essence is not for you to chase, but to make you pause and strengthen faith. If you turn them into a game of constant verification, you lose their purpose. Instead, keep your mind at peace and let the signals come naturally when necessary, like a breeze making you pause, breathe, and recognize you are still on the right way. I have seen that souls sensitive to these signals often walk more steadily, not because they face fewer challenges, but because they know that even in trial, there is a guiding hand. When you see coincidence, let gratitude spread. Even a silent thank you stirs the connecting thread and aligns you more deeply with the sacred plan. You will realize that each time a coincidence happens, a layer of doubt is removed within you, and your faith becomes clearer. You begin to understand that the sacred is never distant. It is always seeking to reach you in a language you can recognize. Coincidence, therefore, is not randomness. It is evidence that your life is being woven into a greater order And when you are willing to open eyes to see, ears to hear, heart to feel, then every small sign becomes a firm link carrying you through the path you were always called to walk. Peace before the storm is a paradoxical experience that only those who have gone deep in the spiritual journey can understand, because outwardly everything may be shaking, plans breaking apart, trials following one another, signals of coincidence still unclear. Yet within you rises a calm solidity, so surprising that even you are amazed. This is not a false peace created by denying difficulty, nor is it numbness before suffering, but a state born from the awareness that a sacred order covers everything, and even though the eyes cannot yet see the outcome, the soul knows with certainty that all is well. In many readings I have recognized that this stage often comes right after a person has endured heavy losses and has been tried long enough, for when there is no external support left, they learn to cling to the inner presence, and at that moment peace appears as a new foundation. You may still see storms outside, finances unbalanced, criticism echoing, opportunities not yet opened, but you no longer tremble. Instead, you hear within a whisper, affirming that all is still within the plan, that you are not lost. This peace is different from stability arranged by man, because man-made stability is fragile. It collapses with the smallest shift, but sacred peace does not depend on circumstances. It is like a rock in the sea. Waves may strike, winds may howl, but the rock remains unmoved. When you are in this state, you are no longer swept away by news, by gossip, by comparisons with others. You begin to walk with steady breath, doing the work at hand today, giving your heart to the smallest thing and letting tomorrow take care of its own. It is the release of the need to control the whole picture that opens for you the door of peace. Many are surprised and ask why in crisis there can be such stillness. And the answer is because their soul has been trained to believe in what is unseen. They have learned to listen to signals of coincidence and know they are not astray. They have gone through sacred loneliness and know that even when no one is beside them, they still have the divine presence as companion. When those lessons accumulate, peace becomes the natural result, not something forced. In this stage, you will realize that fear no longer rules you as before. It may still come, but you look straight at it and see it as only a shadow, not reality. You will also see haste slowly dissolve, replaced by a steady rhythm of life, like a farmer who trusts that harvest will come, though now only seeing bare soil. This peace also changes how you see others. Instead of reacting harshly to attack, you respond calmly. Instead of panicking at rejection, you see it as an arrangement to guide you rightly. That attitude makes you different. For while the world shakes, you remain standing, and that steadiness is a testimony stronger than any sermon. In many cases, peace before the storm even gives you the ability to see opportunities within difficulty, because when the mind is no longer agitated, you can distinguish clearly what is truly important and what is only temporary noise. Creative ideas, new directions often appear in this stage, like light flashing in the night, not arriving when you struggle, but arriving when you are quiet enough to hear. This peace is also not passivity. Rather, it gives you strength to act clearly and decisively, because you act not from fear but from faith. You do not run around trying to put out every fire. You go to the root and resolve it. You are not driven by fear, but guided by the inner certainty. That is why those who hold peace before the storm often become guides for others, for in their calmness, others feel they can lean. In the readings, I often see the light around these people shine brighter and stronger, as if they become beacons for wandering souls. Peace before the storm is proof that faith is not theory, but a state of life, the ability to stand firm when everything else collapses. And it is this state that breaks the fangs of fear. When you walk through this stage, you no longer seek peace in circumstances. You bring peace into circumstances. You become one who sows calm in chaos, who reminds that there is still a higher power beyond what the eyes see. And at some point you will realize that the storm is no longer a threat, but only the stage upon which the peace within you is revealed. And that is the sure sign that you have stepped into a new level of maturity in the journey of the soul. The explosive moment never arrives like a sudden bolt of lightning from nowhere. It comes as the inevitable climax of a process long prepared in silence. From the times of inner activation, from the closing doors, from the sacred loneliness, and from the countless trials you have endured, all woven together into the foundation for this instant. When the moment comes, you no longer doubt that it is chance, because every detail, every upheaval, every old pain aligns into a single picture. And you realize you are standing at the intersection God arranged from the beginning. Explosion here is not outer noise, not necessarily dazzling light for all to see, but first an inner explosion, a resounding unlocking within the soul that makes, with certainty that every waiting has been answered. This feeling is so strong you do not need anyone to confirm it. For the divine presence itself has testified. You need only take a breath, and in that moment, everything that once confused you vanishes, replaced by absolute clarity. I have seen many souls experience this moment in different ways, some standing on a lecture stage, suddenly realizing that their entire journey of study was only to prepare for the instant they spoke the truth of their heart. Some in a simple room, suddenly sensing a wave of light flooding in that brings unstoppable tears. Some in despair over finances, suddenly realizing their true worth cannot be measured by numbers, and within a moment they discover a new way forward. The common thread is that the explosion always happens first at the level of the soul before it spreads outward into circumstances. And once it is erupted within, nothing can stop its expression outside. This moment often comes with strong signs of synchronicity. You will see coincidences appear rapidly, people entering your life at just the right time, doors opening at the right moment, confirmations coming from different directions, all like a chorus announcing that a new chapter has begun. But the most important thing is not that circumstances change, but that you change. You are no longer the old self stepping into the moment. You have become new, and that is why you can now receive what you were not ready for before. This explosion may also appear as intellectual clarity, a breakthrough idea, an entirely new path emerging, something you sought endlessly before but never found, now suddenly becoming clear. It is like a curtain falling away to reveal the path that had always been there, waiting only for you to mature enough to see. For many, it is even instant healing. Old wounds that clung tightly suddenly lose their weight. Haunting memories suddenly grow distant, and a new freedom pours in. You walk in a lightness never before felt, as if the burden of many years has been lifted in a single moment. Of course, explosion does not mean every challenge disappears, but it marks the fundamental shift in how you face them. Before, you trembled and resisted. Now you are calm and proactive. Before, you doubted every step. Now you know with certainty that every step has meaning. Before, you saw only darkness. Now you recognize that light was always present, only waiting for you to open your eyes. What must be noted is that the explosive moment cannot be forced. You cannot create it with will. You can only prepare. Remain faithful. Be patient. And when the time comes, it will arrive as a gift, like a seed in the soil. You cannot make it grow faster by pulling at the sprout. You can only tend the soil, water, wait for the sun, and when conditions are right, the sprout will break through on its own. In the same way, the explosive moment comes when every element within and around you has ripened, and it often happens so quickly that it astonishes you. In many cases, it feels like a fateful turning point, from a meeting that changes a life, a bold decision that takes you onto a new road, a revelation that makes you see the world with new eyes. But deeper still, it is only the inevitable result of the journey already walked. That is why you do not need to compare your moment with another's, for each soul has its own timing and its own way of explosion. What matters is to trust that when your time comes, you will not miss it. And once you have lived it, you carry within an unshakable certainty, a faith no longer tied to circumstances, and a freedom that no power can take away. The explosive moment is heaven's declaration that you are ready to live fully the destiny prepared, and from then on, you no longer walk as one groping in darkness, but as one carrying a flame already ignited, lighting not only your own path, but also the paths of those who will be led by you. Restructuring the self begins right after the explosive moment. It is not about changing the outer garment, but dismantling the old foundation of habits and fears to rebuild from the root. I have seen in many souls that this process touches the three levels of body, mind, and spirit. For the divine intention is not only that you think differently, but that you also breathe differently, eat differently, speak differently, and love differently. The body responds like a craftsman, sending signals. Overeating becomes heavy. Sleep, demand, discipline. Noise asks to be reduced. Clean water and early light become necessities. The endocrine centers retune, like an orchestra finding pitch again. The mind shifts its frame of questions. Do we live to preserve light or to maintain impression? Do we work out of fear of lack or because we are invited to serve? And every honest answer lays another steel beam on the bridge of faith. At the level of the soul, deep memories surface like fragments of a map, piecing together a route agreed upon long ago, not new, but now clear. Restructuring always comes with cutting, like pruning a tree before fruit season. Branches that drain sap without bearing fruit must go. Relationships kept only out of politeness need boundaries. Work that consumes spirit energy must be examined with clear eyes. You learn to say no as a form of honesty with the mission. Not against anyone, but to protect what has been entrusted. The feeling of both loss and gain is normal. Losing familiar noise, but gaining space to listen. Losing surface applause, but gaining deeper and fewer friendships. Losing flashy schedules, but gaining simple and disciplined routines. The day is placed on pillars of silence, labor, service, rest, gratitude, beginning with breath and clear intention, ending with a few lines noting what lifted and what pulled down, along with a small commitment for tomorrow. Such small tools create a new order, and that order allows light to pass through without leakage. The roles of pleaser, rescuer, and prover gradually fall from you, replaced by the role of gatekeeper of the soul, deciding what to let in, what to drive out, opening the gate to what strengthens love, discipline, and conscience. When the gate has a keeper, words are few but weighty, promises short but solid, no careless pledges, no long explanations, standing in the clarity of yes and no. The belief system is also revised. Unconscious statements such as I am unworthy or all good things are rare are brought into light and rewritten into true statements. I am steward of what has been entrusted. I am given more as I share. I meet the right thing at the right time when I remain faithful. If old beliefs flare up, you do not fight them. You name them. Teach them the new sentence and continue your work. The calm repetition makes the new sentence the default. When external changes slow, apply the principle of shell and core. The shell is circumstances. The core is sacred habits. If the core holds, the shell will change. But if the core is empty, the shell, though beautiful, will crack. Thus, you tend the micro-disciplines: sleep enough, eat rightly, exercise moderately, read selectively, speak truthfully, give consistently. The micro-disciplines, like layers of thick wood, strengthen, resisting warping in harsh seasons. In work, restructuring shows in how you speak about others, leaving behind comparison and gossip, replacing them with direct and respectful feedback. For every negative word is a nail you drive into your own mind. In family, you listen without defensiveness, speak truth gently, set boundaries without coldness, sometimes step back to preserve common peace. On the inner journey, you discover the thread between discipline and freedom. Right discipline does not imprison. Right discipline frees because it shapes the flow so the strength does not spill wastefully. As the new structure takes form, you will be tested at the boundaries. Easy money but misaligned values, flattering praise poured into the ego, just pruned. Small storms where calm seemed restored. Such invitations are not to harm, but to test the strength of beams and rafters. Each time you stand firm, the house becomes stronger, and you learn to see temptation as a quality check, not a moral condemnation. Restructuring demands the ethics of attention. You move away from sources that feed confusion, choose content that nourishes wisdom and compassion. For what you look at long, you become. You keep the dining table as a small altar. Keep your living space tidy as a chamber of light. Keep work tools clean as instruments of service. External order, supporting internal order. The further you go, the more you understand. This is not a one-time project, but a long-breathing rhythm, each season reviewing, each Zykle pruning, so that the architecture of the soul remains firm yet flexible before the winds of life. Ultimately, restructuring is not to make you austere, but to make you spacious and pure, capable of holding new blessings and responsibilities, to let you enter the day without needing to prove, to let life speak instead of words. When someone asks how you did it, you may smile and point to the foundation, to the beams, to the quiet room at the start of the day, and say that this is the architecture of the soul, built with the bricks of discipline, the mortar of faith, the roof of gratitude, and the light of the one who always accompanies, very enduring. Facing fear is the unavoidable turning point in the process of transformation. Because even if you have heard the call, gone through sacred loneliness, endured trials, and experienced the explosive moment, the shadow of fear still waits to return and question you once more. Do you truly believe in what has been ignited within your soul? Fear never disappears completely. It only changes form. From fear of failure to fear of success, from fear of loss to fear of responsibility, from fear of abandonment to fear of being seen too clearly. When you enter the stage of restructuring the self, fear will test you through the weakest parts of the new system, just built like wind slipping through the cracks of a newly built house, to check if your foundation is truly strong. In many readings, I have seen that fear often comes right after clear progress, because when light bursts forth, darkness also becomes more visible. And this is the chance for the soul to prove it no longer returns to the old loop. Some feel their heart racing, hands trembling before a decision. Some lose sleep for many nights, imagining worse scenarios. Some hear mocking voices in their head telling them it is all fantasy. This is not a sign you are on the wrong path. but a sign you are standing at a new threshold, and fear knows that if you step through, it will lose its control. The nature of fear is to inflate shadows into reality, to make you believe in a scenario that has not happened, to keep you in the familiar safe zone. It knows you once stumbled, and it will use that memory to threaten. It knows you were once rejected, and it will whisper that it will be the same again. It knows you long for recognition, and it will remind you that people will laugh. But the true power of fear does not lie in the content it presents. It lies in whether you believe and stop or not. If you dare to look straight at it and call it by name, you will see it has no fangs, as you thought. It is only an enlarged shadow on the wall, and when light shines upon it, the shadow disappears. Facing fear does not mean not feeling afraid. It means acting even while afraid. It is stepping out of the comfort zone with a trembling heart, but feet still moving forward. It is writing down what you fear most and placing it under the light of truth, asking yourself, if this happens, what will I do? And when you see you can still survive, can still continue, the power of fear is cut in half. Facing fear also means not letting it drive you back into old habits. Habits like procrastination, seeking distraction, or numbing emotion with addictive things. Instead of running away, you stay and take a deep breath, saying, I see you, but I will not turn back. In that moment, you are not only resisting a feeling, you are reaffirming your entire new identity. Fear may also appear as a test in relationships. You fear losing acceptance from loved ones if you follow a new path. You fear being misunderstood or left out. But remember that your value no longer lies in the approval of others, but in alignment with the divine call. When you dare to live true to the mission, you may lose some familiar eyes, but you will draw souls in harmony, and that exchange is always worth it. Facing fear is also accepting uncertainty, because this journey never gives you a detailed map from start to finish. It only gives you light for the next step. And fear hates this ambiguity. It wants absolute certainty. But you are invited to learn to walk in trust, to understand that not knowing everything is also part of wisdom. You do not need to see the whole path, only to step faithfully in the light of the present. And each step will open the next stretch. When you dare to face fear, you will see that instead of being a stone blocking the way, it becomes a step lifting you higher. Because each time you overcome, you not only win a battle, but you expand your own boundaries. You become freer. What once made you tremble is now only memory, and you walk with new confidence. Fear once was chains, now becomes proof that you have matured, and in the end you understand that no fear is greater than the truth that God has never left you. When that light becomes clear in the soul, fear is no longer the enemy, but only a temporary teacher, teaching you to recognize the strength of faith. This is how the soul is reshaped, not by eliminating fear completely, but by learning to look at it directly, to step through it, and to prove that you belong to the light. The test of faith does not come in radiant moments when you feel full of inspiration. It comes in the prolonged silence when every external proof disappears, and only the question remains, will you still hold on to what you have known? In the depths, this is the harshest stage, because it does not take the form of clear trials, not loss, not suffering, but emptiness, where nothing seems to happen, where the promises you once heard seem indefinitely delayed. I have seen many souls pass through this time with utter weariness, for they had grown accustomed to signals of coincidence, to explosive moments, and they thought the light would continue shining steadily. But then suddenly everything went dark. No reminder, no signal, only silence, like a desert. And it is in that desert that faith is tested to the fullest. For true faith is not the excitement when what you hope for begins to appear. True faith is the next step when there is no assurance that you are walking in the right direction. This is where every illusion is stripped away, where you no longer lean on feelings or signs, but on an unexplainable knowing that the unseen hand is still there, that the promise has never lost its power. The test of faith is the test of time. When one day feels like a year, when prayer brings no reply, when every door remains closed, and when your mind begins to whisper that perhaps you deceived yourself, this is when the soul is forced to choose: either return to the old safe circle or continue walking when nothing can be seen but emptiness. The weight of this emptiness is the furnace, for in it every selfish motive is burned away, leaving only true love for the one who called you. If you walk for reward, you will soon give up when the reward does not come. If you walk for recognition, you will collapse when no one notices. But if you walk simply because, this is truth, because you cannot do otherwise, then you will hold fast even when nothing supports you. That is pure faith. Faith that needs no proof. Faith that needs no crowd. Faith that needs no favorable conditions, but only one thing: that your soul has heard the call and will not betray it. I have witnessed souls who endured this test, and when they stepped out of the desert, the light within them shone far brighter, because now nothing could shake them. They no longer lived by signs, but by inner certainty, and that certainty made them pillars for others. The test of faith may also appear through situations where everything contradicts the promise. You believe blessing will come, but instead new losses appear. You believe the path will open, but instead more walls rise each time. Faith is stretched like a string, near breaking, and you think you cannot endure, but if you persist, you will see the string does not break, but that very tension has made it stronger. This is the lesson no one wants, but everyone must face. Because faith is not measured by what you see, but by what you choose when you see nothing. This test also reveals the truth of your foundation, whether you trust the one who gave the promise more than you trust circumstances, for circumstances can change daily, but the divine intention does not. When you learn to place trust in what is unchanging instead of what is shifting, you gain strength that no storm can overthrow. There is a particular point in this stage, the silence of God. Many think silence means absence, but the truth is silence is the loudest word, for it shows you have been trusted to walk without constant reminders, like a teacher who cannot always hold the student's hand. At some point, he must step back and let the student walk alone. That stepping back is not abandonment, but trust that the student is capable, and it is at that moment you prove you have matured. Facing the test of faith, you will realize that everything in the past was preparation for this: the inner activation, the closing doors, the loneliness, the trials, the coincidences, the peace before the storm, all taught you how to believe, and now you are invited to believe without anything at all. If you pass through, you will enter the stage where faith is no longer a daily choice, but a state of life. You will no longer ask when or how, because you know with certainty that all has been set, and at that moment, blessing will flow in, no longer delayed, because your soul is strong enough to hold it without losing it. The test of faith is a harsh stage, but it is also where the purest strength is forged. And once you have passed through, you will no longer live as one who hopes, but as one who knows. Small signs that open the way often come when you are most weary. When the test of faith has dragged on to the point where the soul feels it has no strength left to wait, when the silence stirs the mind to doubt that perhaps you were mistaken, that everything you heard was only imagination, It is then that very small signs begin to appear, not in the display of grand miracles, but in subtle details just enough to remind you that the path is still there, that the promise has not vanished. I have seen many souls step out of despair through such signs, a casual word from a stranger carrying the message you had just prayed for in silence. A small opportunity appearing that does not solve everything, but is enough to affirm that you are not off track. A coincidence that seems meaningless, yet makes your heart shine for a moment with certainty. These small signs are the language of heaven, not loud, but persistent, not dazzling, but strong enough to rekindle a fading flame. What matters is whether you have eyes to see and a heart to recognize. For many wait for great proofs and miss the humble signals. They wait for the door to burst open, but do not notice the thin ray of light slipping through the crack. They wait for a complete answer, but overlook a simple hint. Yet, in the sacred order, everything great begins from the small, and if you do not recognize and value humble beginnings, you will never have the strength to hold the greater blessing. In many readings, I see an unchanging law, that heaven always sends small signs first to test whether your heart is still open and grateful. If you despise the small, you will also despise the great. If you cannot recognize the divine hand in an ordinary detail, you will not recognize it even when a great miracle arrives. Small signs are how the soul practices before lifting heavy weight. They prepare you with strength to receive the full blessing. It may be a small sum of money arriving just as you worry, not enough to solve everything, but enough to remind you the supply is not gone. It may be a job door slightly opening, not yet the role you dream of, but a step in the right direction. It may be a meeting that seems accidental, but plants in you a new spark of hope. All of these are stepping stones, and if you continue walking on them, you will reach the wide place. Wisdom is to learn to distinguish between chance and arrangement. When you walk in faith, you will see that what seemed random fits together into an ordered picture. Each small sign is a piece, and as you persist, the pieces take shape until you see the whole. That is why you must not underestimate what is small. An unexpected word of comfort, a sense of peace in the storm, a prayer answered, not perfectly, but on time. All are confirmations that you are still on the right way. Many grow disappointed because they expect the big door to open at once, but they do not understand that the soul is not yet strong enough to hold it. That is why heaven sends the small things to build the capacity to receive. If you rejoice and give thanks for each small step, you will see the greater step draw nearer. But if you dismiss and complain, the journey lengthens, not because God has forgotten you, but because your soul is not yet ready. When you practice recognizing the small signs, you will see the world around you change. You begin to see the divine hand in every corner, in a blooming flower, in a bird in flight, in a fleeting opportunity, and that very recognition deepens the connection, bringing signals more often, more clearly. Heaven always speaks. Only people are too busy or too doubtful to listen. Therefore, small signs that open the way are lessons in attention. Gratitude and faithfulness, they teach you that it is not only great miracles that prove the Creator's presence, but the simple things of daily life are enough to remind you He is still with you. Remember that the smallest mustard seed can grow into a great tree, and it is in the small that you are proven worthy of the great. When you walk with a grateful heart for every small sign, you are enlarging the space for the greater miracle to come, and when it does, you will realize you had been prepared through the simplest details. Small signs that open the way are not temporary comfort, but the strategy of the sacred realm to guide you through darkness without stumbling, to remind you that the journey continues, and to keep the flame in your heart burning until the day the promise is fully revealed. Rethinking failure and waiting is one of the most important turns of the journey, because here the soul is taught to see with different eyes, no longer seeing failure as collapse, but as the disguise of process, no longer seeing delay as meaningless postponement, but as preparation. Human beings easily take failure as the end, as proof that they are not capable or not blessed. But in many readings I have seen clearly that failure itself is the tool heaven uses to break wrong structures within you, to cut away old roots that cannot be carried into the new season. Every failure is not a dead end, but a test cycle, like a clay vessel fired in the furnace to reveal cracks, so that the potter may mend it and strengthen it before it is used to hold precious water. When you stumble, when plans fall apart, when dreams remain unfulfilled, pause and ask not why was I rejected, but what is being purified from me. For failure is only truly failure if it leaves you lying in bitterness. But if you see it as a lesson, it becomes the foundation of strength. The great souls I have seen in the Akashic records all share one thing. They once tasted bitter failure, but instead of letting it destroy them, they let it reshape them. A business person losing all wealth, but learning humility and the ability to rebuild. A mother losing a child, but becoming a source of comfort for the suffering. One once lost in darkness, now becoming a witness to the power of light. Each failure was written as a lesson, so that nothing in them could cling to illusion. After failure comes waiting, and this is the subtler test, because humans can endure pain for a moment, but enduring prolonged silence easily makes them faint of heart. Waiting is the space between seed sown and harvest, the time when under the ground everything works silently, but on the surface nothing changes. In that space, the farmer has two choices: to abandon the field or to believe that the seed is sprouting. In the same way, you can complain that heaven has forgotten you, or you can remain steadfast, watering with small actions, tending the soil with faithfulness, and keeping faith like a flame in the night. Waiting is not useless delay, but the process of accumulating strength. In waiting, you learn patience. You learn not to be led by immediate emotion. You learn to lay firm foundation for the day of breakthrough. If things come too soon, you will not have the strength to hold them, but when they come at the right time, you will have the depth to sustain them. Waiting is also the stage where your motives are tested. Do you pursue your dream for glory or for the call? For self-satisfaction or for serving a greater purpose? In the prolonged silence, every falsehood in you is stripped away, leaving only truth. If that truth is pure, you will pass through. If not, you will have to learn again. Rethinking failure and waiting is a double lesson. One about looking back, one about looking ahead, looking back to see that failure did not destroy you, but refined you. Looking ahead to see that waiting does not imprison you, but prepares you. If you open the eyes of the soul, you will see that every failure carries within it a seed, and every waiting carries within it a promise. When you learn to embrace failure without blame, without denial, but as a necessary part of process, you will become free, because you know nothing is truly lost. Everything is only reshaped. When you learn to wait without despair, you will enter peace, because you understand that time is not against you, but working for you. And when the promise is revealed, you will know that without failure, you would never have enough humility to hold the blessing. Without waiting, you would never have enough steadfastness to sustain the light. Rethinking failure and waiting is the key to unlocking true maturity. And when you hold it, you will no longer fear falling, nor fear delay, because you know everything rests in the hand of the one who called you. The inner transformation does not happen in one day, and it does not come from any external event. It is the silent process of recreating the roots of the soul. when old beliefs are dismantled so that new ones may be formed, when the inner structure changes so deeply that you no longer recognize yourself compared to before. In many readings, I have seen clearly that this is the deepest part of the journey, where light not only shines upon you from outside, but begins to radiate from within, no longer dependent on sins, no longer dependent on feelings, but becoming a constant state. The inner transformation often begins with upheaval. You find that what once brought you joy no longer attracts. What once held you back now loses its weight. Conversations once fascinating now feel empty. You no longer seek the agreement of others as before. Instead, you seek alignment with the inner voice. This is not a withdrawal from life, but a redefinition of how you are present in life, from chasing to fill the void, to living from the place of already being enough. You begin to notice the change in every small detail, in how you respond to adversity, in how you choose words, in how you face yourself. Before, you were easily swept into anxiety. Now you pause to breathe and remember that everything is still in the hand of the one who called you. Before, you lost your calm when misunderstood. Now you know that truth does not need argument to prove itself. Before, you looked at failure as a stain. Now you see it as a necessary part of the process. This is when you know you have been transformed, not because others praise you, but because within you are no longer the same. The inner transformation also shows clearly through the change of what nourishes you. You no longer desire what scatters the mind. Instead, you long for stillness, depth, truth. You seek teachings that uplift, relationships that nourish the soul, work that carries meaning, and you move away from what is toxic, not out of force, but simply because you no longer fit with it. When the soul shifts frequency, what is not in harmony will fall away, and though that may make you feel lonely, it also frees you to find greater alignment. The inner transformation also touches the deep layer of memory. Old wounds may resurface to be healed, not to torment you, but to give you the chance to see and release them. Many fear when past pain returns, but understand that it is a sign you are ready to let go, that the inner light is strong enough to touch the dark corners. When you dare to face it, the wound is no longer a chain, but a place where light passes through, and it is in that process you are healed at the root. Transformation within is also a change of identity. You no longer define yourself by external labels, by profession, status, or recognition. You begin to understand that your value lies in who you are in relation to the Creator. You live with the awareness that you are a soul with a mission, no longer just a small individual struggling with life. From this, your confidence no longer comes from achievements, but from the certainty that you are upheld and guided. You may fail in the eyes of others, but you know you never fail in the eyes of God. If you remain faithful to the call, when this transformation deepens, you will see clearly the difference between fleeting joy and lasting joy. Fleeting joy comes from obtaining something. Lasting joy comes from living in true identity. You are no longer dependent on outcomes. You rejoice, even when results are not visible, because you know you are on the right way. This is true freedom, freedom not bound by circumstance, freedom not chained by expectations of others, freedom to live fully each day. As part of the greater journey, I have seen many souls at this stage, their faces radiant. Though nothing outside had changed, for that radiance did not come from circumstances, but shone out from within. That is the clearest sign of transformation, when light no longer only shines upon you, but shines out of you. When you enter this state, you become a source of peace for others, not by words, but by presence, Others come near and feel calm, not because you do anything special, but because you carry within you the solidity forged in fire. The inner transformation finally leads you to a simple truth that you do not need to seek more to become. You only need to live in the truth already, given everything else is only shell to be removed. And when the shell falls away, you see more clearly than anyone that your soul was never lacking, that you have always been enough, and that everything necessary to keep walking was planted in you from the beginning. The manifestation of integration does not appear as a loud performance. It reveals itself silently but surely in every thread of life. When thought, feeling, body, and action pulse at the same frequency, when what you pray for is what you live each day, and what you live each day corresponds to what you know for certain in the depths, I have seen in many readings that the moment a person integrates with their calling, their appearance changes before their circumstances do. The eyes become calmer, the voice clearer, the steps steadier, even the breath more, even and deep like measured waves. And it is these micro changes that unlock macro movements outside, on the level of the body. The endocrine system tunes like an orchestra to the right pitch. Sleep returns to natural cycles. Hunger and fullness signal more truthfully. Muscles respond positively to gentle discipline instead of force. And you realize you want to eat what nourishes rather than what stimulates. Want to walk in the morning sun instead of sitting long before a screen. Want to drink clean water instead of drinking emotions. On the level of the mind, tangled inner dialogues are simplified. Decisions become decisive, not from haste, but from clarity of standard. What lifts the soul is kept. What drains is released. What is neutral is left to fall away. And you no longer waste energy on pointless arguments because, truth needs living more than defending. On the level of the soul, a gentle sense of arrangement covers the day. You are placed in the right place, right time, with the right people. And knowing this, you no longer startle at sudden changes. You shift as gently as water, shaping a riverbed. The manifestation of integration also shows in the daily rhythm. The day begins in silence and ends in gratitude. In between are honest labor, timely service, humble learning, simple yois, and a short pause at noon to recollect work is no longer the place. You seek recognition. But the altar, where you offer quality, you do what must be done today with the care of a steward, and that care itself becomes the invitation for new doors to open. Finances respond like a clean flow. Income tied to the value you create. Expense tied to ordered priorities. Giving becomes a habit rather than a passing impulse. And you realize true security is not in the amount stored, but in the capacity to let grace flow through your hands. Relationships refine naturally. You no longer try to please, nor need anyone to validate you. You choose to be fully present when meeting, to listen without defense, to speak truth with boundaries, and to leave when resonance is gone without resentment. In integration, forgiveness becomes the new instinct, not from weakness, but from understanding that each person is learning their own lesson, and holding resentment only clouds your own vision. Home and workplace reflect inner order, the desk neat, objects chosen for function and simple beauty, windows open to light, a small corner reserved for prayer and journaling, where ideas come and are kept in careful words. You discover gentle discipline, not harsh, but steady, like a thread stitching inner armor, so that sudden events touching you do not tear the order apart. The manifestation of integration also lies in your use of words, sentences short, meaning clear, not inflating the self, not exaggerating success, not darkening hardship. You describe reality as it is and place upon it the next possible action. This is the language of one who has left the maze of emotions and stands upon the rock of truth. Signs of synchronicity still appear, but you no longer rely on them to decide. You receive them as supporting chimes to the main melody, that melody being intuition trained by good habits, by steady prayer, by faithful service. At this time, opportunities feel fitting, not too tight to suffocate, not too wide to lose direction. They invite you to take one more step that you can hold steadily, and each step like that widens your view. Integration allows you to distinguish false shine from true light. What demands instant display is often fragile. What grows quietly is often enduring. So you choose to sow seeds in silence, to let roots grow deep before branches spread high. In unexpected trial, the manifestation of integration is the ability to slow the heartbeat with breath, to ask the right question instead of seeking blame, to separate event from interpretation, to choose a quality response instead of reflex, and to place responsibility in its rightful place. You discern what is yours, what is another's, what is time's, and so you no longer cut air with a knife or try to block waves with bare hands. At a deeper level, you see prayer has changed, less asking to be delivered, more asking to understand and be faithful, less asking to see, more asking to become, less asking for miracles, more asking to do the small things with wonder. You surrender without passivity. You choose without controlling. You do your part fully and leave the rest to the greater order to complete. In society, the manifestation of integration is the ability to become a bridge. You do not use truth to divide. You bring clarity to reconcile, bring standards to build, and you accept progress in steady steps rather than quick victories. With yourself, that manifestation is gentleness after mistakes. You correct small and promptly, without self-humiliation, without distorting concepts. You take responsibility without self-condemnation. Finally, the manifestation of integration is that you become living evidence of what you believe. Others may not hear your whole story, but they sense the fragrance of peace, order, and kindness in you, and that fragrance convinces more than any argument. When integrated, you no longer rush to prove, because life itself is the answer, and in that answer is the steady step of the faithful steward, the warmth of the kind brother, the gaze of the child who knows he is always in the Father's house. Living as evidence is the stage when the inner journey is no longer theory, no longer a private experience kept only in prayer or in journals, but becomes a clear presence before others, not through boasting words, but through the way you live each day. This is when you no longer need to explain for anyone to believe you, because your whole life has already become proof of the truth. You have recognized, in many readings I have seen, that light is never given for one soul to keep for itself. Once placed in a soul, it must sooner or later shine out so that others may find the way. You are not required to become a preacher or a leader, but the way you face trials, the peace you hold in adversity, the faithfulness you show in the smallest things will be a louder sermon than any speech. When you live as evidence, you enter a new kind of freedom, no longer haunted by the need to prove your worth, no longer weary from arguing right and wrong, because, truth does not need defending. It only needs living. You may be misunderstood, doubted, even opposed, but deep inside you are no longer shaken, because you no longer live to please people, but to align with the one who called you. This is the clearest milestone of spiritual maturity, when you not only speak of faith, but become faith made visible. The manifestation of this stage can be seen in every aspect. In work, you do not chase easy opportunities that go against your values. You choose honesty even when it costs you. And the result is that trust gradually forms around you. In family, you do not react in old patterns. You choose to listen. You choose words that build. And through this, your loved ones feel a new flow of peace. In social relationships, you are no longer pulled into the whirlpool of arguments, when to speak and when to remain silent. You know how to distinguish what is yours, what belongs to others, what belongs to time, and this discernment makes you steadfast. Living as evidence is also shown in consistency. You do not switch faith on and off according to circumstances, believing one day and doubting the next, but you maintain a steady state, whether in ease or hardship. This makes others begin to seek you, not because you persuaded them, but because they see in you something they long for, a certainty, a peace, a light, and in that very presence, you become a channel for greater light to reach them. This is also when you understand clearly that every action, no matter how small, is symbolic, a sincere word of thanks, a kind act unseen, a faithful deed unrecognized, all create the fragrance of the soul, and that fragrance spreads farther than words. When you live as evidence, you no longer divide between sacred and ordinary, because everything you do, from work, eating, resting, to how you treat others, becomes a form of service. And when every small thing becomes service, you have truly integrated with the light. The important thing is that living as evidence does not mean flawless perfection. You must still have weak moments, but the difference is that you no longer hide or justify. You honestly acknowledge, correct quickly, and move on. That honesty is the strongest evidence because it shows a transformation is real, not a false mask. Others will see you fall, but rise quickly. See you tested, but not lose peace. See you tempted, but choose faithfulness. And that is the clearest testimony. In this process, you also learn not to carry the burden of changing others. You only need to live fully and let the light do its part. You do not force anyone to believe. You do not argue to win. You only sow seeds through presence, and those seeds will sprout in their season. You also begin to see that recognition or rejection from others does not add or subtract your true value, for that value was engraved from the beginning. From this, you live lightly, not bound by praise or criticism, no longer fearing the loss of image. You live as evidence not to be honored, but because it is your new nature. A soul that is integrated cannot help but shine, just as a lamp cannot be hidden under a table. And that natural shining itself becomes an invitation for those still searching. Living as evidence also means you become the extension of a promise. When others look at you, they see proof that transformation is real, that light is real, that faith is not illusion. And in the moment they realize this, a seed is planted in their soul. This is how light spreads, not through grand platforms, but through ordinary people living each day as evidence of truth. And you, when you enter this stage, need not seek another role, for your life itself is the role, the evidence, the living testimony for the world. The cycle of expansion is an unavoidable law in the spiritual journey, because once light has been planted in the soul, it never remains still. It demands to grow, to spread, to expand, and that very expansion opens new challenges and new levels of learning. Many people think that after experiencing transformation and living as evidence, the journey will come to an end, that once peace is attained, difficulties will cease. But the truth is the opposite. Peace is only the foundation for a new cycle of growth, just as a seed, when it sprouts, does not stop at being a seedling, but must continue to grow into a tree, then blossom, then bear fruit, then scatter seed again. So too the soul, once rooted in light, is continuously invited to grow, and each expansion is accompanied by a new cycle of testing. In many readings, I have seen a consistent law that the universe operates in a spiral rhythm, not a closed circle. Each cycle similar in form, but higher in degree. What once terrified you in the past may return, but this time you face it from a higher vantage point, with deeper understanding and greater steadiness. Therefore, do not be surprised if lessons you thought were over appear again. They do not return to pull you down, but to lift you higher. The cycle of expansion shows that this journey has no fixed endpoint, only endless levels, and the soul will keep ascending forever in the process of perfection. Each cycle begins with a new stirring in the soul, like the sound of a drum heard from afar, signaling that you are about to be ushered into another phase. You may feel a strong urge to step out of your comfort zone, to try something new, to broaden your reach. And the moment you answer that call, challenges arrive, not to block you, but to prepare you for the wider space. You are invited to learn to manage energy better, to keep discipline more firmly, to avoid being swept into the complexity of a larger field. This is where many stumble, because they think expansion brings only joy, but in truth, expansion also exposes weaknesses never seen before. If you are not faithful in small things, you cannot be steady in great things. That is why the cycle of expansion is not only a reward, but also a filter. It removes what no longer matches the new frequency. Sometimes an old relationship, sometimes a habit you thought harmless, sometimes even a part of how you see yourself. Expansion forces you to let go more, because only an open hand can receive. A clenched hand cannot hold anything new. In this process, you will notice that responsibility expands alongside blessing. You have more opportunities, but you are also called to live with greater wisdom. You have more people seeking you, but you must also learn to hold deeper humility. If you see expansion as glory for yourself, you will soon be exhausted. But if you see it as an opportunity to serve, you will find new strength in every step. The cycle of expansion also clarifies the truth that light is never for one person alone. When you are lifted, the light within you will touch others, and that very interaction generates new challenges. Some will admire you, some will oppose you, some will try to pull you down. But all of it only reinforces one thing, that you are not to live for the self, but for truth. If you keep your eyes on truth, you will not be shaken by praise or blame. And then the cycle of expansion becomes an opportunity to prove your steadfastness. Each cycle of expansion is also a reminder that you have never walked alone. Kindred souls will appear, companions, friends, teachers, and students who walk with you. These connections are not random. They are part of a divine network where every thread is woven into its right place to form a vast tapestry. When you enter a new cycle, open your eyes to recognize these connections, for they are the means heaven uses to expand you further. And the last and most important truth is that the cycle of expansion reminds you there is no achievement that is the final destination. Every achievement is only a step, and once you set foot on it, you will see another higher step. This is not a threat, but an invitation, because life itself is continuous expansion. If you accept this law, you will no longer cling to results as the ultimate goal. You will see each result as evidence that you are on the way, and you will keep walking without fear, because you know the light never runs dry. And the journey of the soul has only just begun. The experience of mature faith is not like the first hesitant steps, when the soul still needs signals and evidence for reassurance. Nor is it like the dazzling bursts when light suddenly pours in, but it is a deeper, steadier state where faith is no longer a temporary choice but becomes character, a natural breath. In many readings, I have seen clearly that this stage is often marked by a fundamental change in how a person reacts to challenges. In the past, when storms came, they immediately prayed for a miracle to escape. Now they calmly look straight at the storm and keep walking, not because they are physically stronger or intellectually smarter, but because they know for certain that a divine order covers them, and they no longer need to see the outcome before they dare to step forward. Mature faith is revealed when you are no longer swayed by circumstances, when success does not make you overly excited and difficulty does not make you despair. You know that both are only rhythms of life, and you learn to walk with peace in every fluctuation. This does not make you cold or indifferent. On the contrary, it makes you gentler because you are no longer afraid of loss. And that very freedom from fear opens in you the capacity to love more deeply. Mature faith also changes how you view time. In the past, you were impatient to see immediate results, wanting promises to be fulfilled at once, but now you learn to honor the process. You understand that growth cannot be rushed, that the seed needs time to sprout, that harvest comes only after care and waiting. You are no longer anxious at the silence of heaven. You learn to hear silence as a form of answer. You no longer expect constant signals to reinforce faith. You live in certainty even when no signs appear. This is the clearest evidence of mature faith. When you no longer rely on feelings but rest on the truth engraved in your soul, this experience is also revealed in how you see failure and adversity. You no longer ask, why is this happening to me? But what is this teaching me? You no longer see failure as the end, but as part of the lesson. You no longer waste energy on resentment or complaint. You dedicate it to finding meaning and continuing to walk. This attitude turns trials into stepping stones, pain into assets, loss into expansion. In this stage, you begin to see clearly the difference between childish faith and mature faith. Childish faith is to believe good will come if everything goes smoothly. Mature faith is to believe in good, even when everything is in disorder. Childish faith waits for miracles to come from outside. Mature faith lives as if the miracle has already begun from within. Childish faith breaks easily when tested. Mature faith becomes stronger when tested because it has been tempered through time. This is also when you realize faith is not a feeling that rises and falls, but a continuous choice. Each morning you wake and choose to believe, choose to live in light, choose to walk in truth. And when that choice becomes habit, it becomes nature. You no longer struggle to believe. You simply live in faith as naturally as you breathe, without thinking. This brings a profound freedom because you are no longer controlled by what suddenly happens. You can face every circumstance with peace and strength. Mature faith also changes how you relate to others. You no longer try to force them to believe as you do. You are patient and let them walk their own journey. You understand faith cannot be imposed. It can only be awakened. Therefore, instead of debating, you live as evidence, and your very presence becomes the invitation. You know, your task is not to save the world, but to be faithful with what is given. And when you do that, light spreads naturally. In many cases, mature faith is also revealed through the ability to let go. You no longer need to control everything, no longer need to know every outcome in advance. You know that the one who began the work in you will also complete it. And that very release opens space for grace to operate. You see clearly that when you stop clinging, blessings come naturally. Mature faith also changes even the rhythm of daily life. You work not to prove, but to serve. You pray not to ask endlessly, but to listen. You give not to trade, but because it is your new nature And in all things, you maintain peace, not dependent on results. This is the height of faith, not the kind of faith that demands evidence, but faith that itself becomes the evidence. When a person lives in such a state, they become a pillar for others, not because they loudly proclaim, but because the certainty within them is undeniable, and when others see it, they know transformation is real. The experience of mature faith is therefore not an endpoint, but the foundation for you to enter the next cycles of expansion, because that faith has now become a state of living, unshakable, unstealable, and it will be the flame that lights you through every season ahead of the journey. Alignment with the universe is not a vague state of random coincidences, but a subtle synchronization between the rhythm of your soul and the greater rhythm of creation. When you have gone through trials, learned to live as evidence, and stepped into mature faith, you begin to realize that everything in life is no longer fragmented, but flows together into an orderly stream. Events that seemed accidental arrive at the right moment. People you thought you met by chance turn out to be the necessary link. Opportunities appear exactly when you are ready. This is not baseless luck, but a clear sign that you are in alignment with the universe. You are no longer resisting the flow, no longer wandering in chaos, but have harmonized with the deeper law that governs all things. In many readings, I have seen one thing clearly, that alignment does not come when people try to manipulate or force. It comes when they learn to let go of control and adjust themselves to match the greater order. The universe never adjusts to man. Man must adjust to align with the universe. And when you are willing to bow, you discover that every door opens in the least strenuous way. This alignment is first recognized through small signs, repeating numbers, coincidences, but the deeper you go, the more you realize it is not just on the surface. It is present in how you meet the right person at the right time, how an idea arrives simultaneously with the opportunity to implement it, how resources appear just when you choose to step forward. This does not mean you will no longer face challenges, but even challenges align. They come not to defeat you, but to lift you to the necessary level. Alignment with the universe also changes how you see time. You no longer rush ahead, nor lag behind out of fear. You walk with a balanced pace, and this very rhythm allows you to see that every step has meaning. When you wait, you do not wait in restlessness, but in calm, knowing the right time will arrive when every factor has ripened. When you act, you do not act in anxiety, but in certainty that this is the right step. You begin to live in alignment with seasons, knowing when to sow, when to tend, when to harvest, and this alignment makes your life into a continuous flow. No more sudden yerks, no more frantic runs followed by abrupt halts. In relationships, alignment with the universe draws toward you those of the same frequency, kindred souls, necessary companions. You no longer waste time trying to persuade those not on the same path. You learn to release relationships that have ended their time and hold on to the connections that bring expansion. Encounters become full of meaning, no longer just coincidence, but arrangements so that you and others may together fulfill a part in the greater design. Alignment also means you learn to listen to your body and the environment. When the body needs rest, you rest. When it urges action, you act. When nature signals, you respond. You pay attention to the rhythm of the sun, of the moon, of the seasons, and you see they reflect the journey of the inner life. This alignment takes you out of the artificial rhythm of anxiety and into the primordial rhythm of the universe. What is important is that alignment does not mean you lose will. On the contrary, You use will to tune yourself to the right frequency. When you choose honesty instead of deceit, service instead of selfishness, patience instead of haste, you are turning the dial of your soul to match the greater wave, and once tuned, you no longer need to strain, for the flow carries you farther than you could walk alone. In this experience, you will see worry diminish markedly, because you know that even when you do not understand, there is still an order at work. You no longer need to plan every detail, to control everything. You set clear goals, but leave open how they arrive. You learn to walk in flexibility, letting surprise become ally instead of enemy. This is a form of deep freedom where you are both active and surrendered, doing your best while trusting the arrangement. Alignment with the universe also makes your life into evidence for others. They look and see that you are not without challenges, but the way you walk makes everything meaningful. They see you meet the right people, the right opportunities. They see you not hurrying yet going far. They see you at peace in turmoil, and that makes them recognize that a higher rhythm is at work. When you are aligned, you become an instrument sounding in the great symphony, and your note is no longer isolated, but in harmony with the whole. This is the beauty of alignment, when your soul no longer moves against the current, but has found its place in the symphony of the universe. And from here, every step you take becomes a harmonious note in the endless song of life. The lesson of letting go is one of the most crucial points of the spiritual journey, because no matter how much knowledge you accumulate, how many trials you endure, how many explosive experiences or alignments you encounter, if you do not learn to let go, you will still be bound by the invisible chains of the ego and of control. Letting go is not giving up, nor is it passively drifting with the current of life, but a state of awareness in which you understand that everything has its own order, and you no longer need to force the universe to move according to your will. In many readings, I have seen clearly one thing, that the more people try to hold on, the more they lose. The tighter they cling, the more they suffer, and only when they learn to open their hands can they receive something better. Letting go begins with letting go of the ego that always wants to prove, to control, to make others understand, recognize, and praise. When you cling to the ego, you make yourself a slave to the eyes and words of others, and you lose true freedom. Letting go of the ego means accepting that you do not need to win every argument. You do not need to prove you are right. You do not need to maintain a perfect image, because your true value does not lie in the recognition of the world, but in your relationship with the Creator. Once you release that burden, you step into deep freedom where you can live authentically without fear. Letting go is also letting go of control, because control is the greatest illusion of mankind. You cannot control the weather. You cannot control the thoughts of others. You cannot control every situation that happens, and if you try, you will be exhausted. Letting go here is learning to distinguish what belongs to you and what belongs to the universe. Your part is to be faithful in the small things, to keep discipline, to live honestly, to sow seeds through concrete actions each day. The universe's part is to arrange the timing, open the doors, bring the right people to the right place, and you have no right to control that part. When you stop interfering in what does not belong to you, you will feel lighter. You will be surprised when everything arrives at the right time. Letting go is also releasing old burdens, painful memories, wounds that have not been healed. Many people hold on to the past like carrying a bag of stones, tired everywhere they go, when simply opening their hands would let them walk freely, but they do not dare to let go because they think letting go means forgetting, betraying themselves, or excusing others' mistakes. In truth, letting go does not mean denial or forgetting. It means putting the past in its proper place, no longer giving it the power to control the present. When you let go, the memory remains, but it no longer burns you. Letting go is also learning to release expectations. How many times have you suffered simply because life did not follow the script you had written in your head? You expected others to act a certain way, to speak a certain way, expected your career to follow a straight line, expected life to be fair, and when reality differed, you drowned in disappointment. Letting go of expectations is accepting reality as it is, not meaning giving up dreams, but knowing that everything will come in its own way and in its own time, not on your schedule. This is the hardest lesson because it requires you to believe that the divine order is always wiser than the limited human mind. Letting go is also a lesson in trust, because no one dares to let go unless they believe they will be held. You can only open your hand when you know for sure that another hand, stronger, will hold you. And when you truly believe, you can let go, not in fear, but in peace. From there, letting go becomes a way of life, not a one-time act, but a regular rhythm. Each day, you release a little fear, a little anger, a little control, a little anxiety, and each release opens space for peace and blessing. To arrive, you realize that letting go does not make you lose. Letting go makes you richer, because you are no longer full of old things. You have room to receive the new. At some point you will see that letting go is the secret of freedom, the path to true maturity. You are no longer led by emotions, no longer chained by the past, no longer bound by expectations. You walk lightly, not because you have everything, but because you know that everything necessary will come at the right time. And most importantly, you realize that letting go is not losing. Letting go is allowing God to place in your hands what you never dared to imagine, because only when your hands are empty can you receive in full. Gratitude as a healing energy is not a casual phrase or a matter of social courtesy. It is a real current with the power to transform the vibration of the body, renew the mind, and expand the soul. When a person has walked long enough on the spiritual journey, they realize that gratitude is not just a reaction when receiving something, but that they liberate the state chosen even in loss, even in waiting, even in suffering. In many readings, I have seen clearly that souls who maintain an attitude of gratitude consistently shine brighter, their health is more resilient, and blessings come to them more naturally, because gratitude is not an effect. It is a cause. It is like a seed that, when sown in the ground, will draw rain and sun in the right season. Gratitude sown in the soul will draw healing and abundance. On the level of the body, gratitude releases accumulated tension, lowers the heart rate, and regulates the breath, because when you choose gratitude, you pull energy away from worry and resentment, which are what cause the body to produce toxins. When gratitude becomes a habit, your body learns a different way of responding. Instead of contracting in fear, it opens in trust. And this open state allows energy to circulate more freely and healing to occur more quickly. On the level of the mind, gratitude is like a new lens that helps you see things differently. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me, you ask, what is this teaching me? Instead of resenting a closed door, you are grateful that it removed the wrong path. Instead of mourning someone who left, you are grateful that they completed their role in your journey. This change of perspective makes the mind less agitated. Instead of spinning in resentment, it finds stillness in recognizing the grace hidden in challenges. On the level of the soul, Gratitude is the strongest magnetic force to draw you closer to the divine order. Because when you are grateful, you affirm that you trust, that you no longer resist the flow, that you accept and honor the process, and when the soul vibrates in that trust, it aligns with universal law and blessings flow as a result. Gratitude is also a powerful way to heal memory. Many carry wounds from the past, holding resentment like clutching a hot coal, being burned by it every day. But when they learn gratitude, not for the bad thing that happened, but for the fact that they survived, that they learned the lesson, that they became stronger, then the energy of the memory is transformed. Instead of being a burden, it becomes an asset. Instead of being a wound, it becomes evidence of healing. Gratitude does not erase the past, but it rewrites the meaning of the past, and this change of meaning liberates the soul. Gratitude also expands the space for new blessings. When you constantly complain and resent, you close the door because you signal that you are not ready to receive. But when you are grateful even in the small things, you expand the vessel, and the universe responds by sending more. This is why those who maintain gratitude often live more fulfilled lives, not because they face fewer challenges, but because they keep their frequency open and thus attract abundance. In daily practice, gratitude can begin with the smallest things. Write down 3 things you are grateful for each morning. Take a minute of silence before a meal to acknowledge the source of provision. Speak a word of thanks to someone each day. These small actions create habit, and habit creates state. That state gradually becomes nature. At some point, you will no longer need to strain to remember. You will naturally see something to be grateful for in every event. At that point, you have entered the realm of healing because the energy of gratitude now flows naturally through you, radiating into the environment around you. Gratitude also has the power to heal relationships. When you stop demanding that others act according to your expectations and instead begin to acknowledge what they have done, the energy between you changes. The other person may still be imperfect, but they feel the appreciation, and that opens the way for true change. Gratitude is like water softening stone, not through violence, but through patience, seeping in and dissolving hardness. On the highest level, gratitude is not just a personal response, but a state of communion with the source of life. When you are grateful, you silently say that I and you are one, that I believe you have never left me, and in that moment, separation disappears, the soul is healed at its root, because it no longer feels abandoned, but feels itself held in great arms. This is complete healing, not only mending wounds, but restoring identity. Gratitude as a healing energy, therefore, is not just a virtue. It is the key for you to step into freedom, to be freed from burdens, to open your heart, and to walk lightly on the journey. And when gratitude becomes nature, your life is not only healed, but becomes a source of healing for others, because anyone who comes near you will sense the fragrance of peace and abundance flowing from you. The final affirmation of the presence of God does not come as a slogan to be repeated, but as a profound experience that permeates every layer of the soul, so that you know for certain that from the beginning until this very moment you have never been abandoned. After all the cycles of testing, the failures and waiting, the small signs and the explosive breakthroughs, you realize that at the center of every upheaval lies a single truth, that God has always been there, unchanging, not silent out of indifference, but silent to teach you maturity. Many souls in their early stage often seek tangible proof. They want to hear thunder, to see miracles, to have great signs to believe that God is present. But as they go deeper into the journey, They understand that this presence is not meant to be displayed, but to saturate every detail of life. You see him in a steady breath, in a flower blooming by the window, in the patience you did not have before, in the peace you had never known. This presence does not need proof. It reveals itself when you are still enough to recognize it. The final affirmation is when you can stand in adversity and still say, I am not alone. When you can look at loss and still say, I am not lacking. When you can step into silence and still hear the whisper that I am with you. This is not blind belief. This is a knowing that has been refined through experience. You have walked through enough paths to see that if not for that presence, you would no longer be standing. That if not for the unseen hand upholding you, you would have collapsed in the dark. This truth is the destination of the entire journey, for everything else was only preparation for you to realize that he has never left. In many readings, I see that the presence of God is most clearly perceived when people stop resisting, when they let go of the desire to control, when they no longer seek him far away, but realize he has always been within. This is a deep union, no longer a separation between the small self and the infinite source of life. You no longer pray as one who begs, but as one who converses with, the one who always walks with you. You no longer ask if he is there. You only need to be silent and know that he is here. The final affirmation also leads you to true freedom. You no longer fear loss because you know nothing is truly lost in the hands of God. You no longer fear failure because you know every failure is only a classroom. You no longer fear death because you know your life is already joined to the eternal source of life. When these fears dissolve, you walk lightly, and that lightness itself is the strongest evidence of the divine presence. Others may ask how you can be at peace in the storm, how you can love when betrayed, how you can forgive when hurt. And the only answer is, because I know God is with me. This is an answer that needs no argument. For your life itself is the evidence. The final affirmation also shows in how you see the world. Before, you saw life full of chaos and injustice. Now you see a deeper order beneath. You see that both suffering and joy are woven into a tapestry of meaning. You see that every soul is on its own journey to realize the same truth. You no longer rush to judge. You no longer burn with anger. You no longer fall into despair, because you know everything rests in the plan of the one who created. This awareness makes you a source of comfort to others. When they are confused, you remind them that he has never been absent. When they are weary, you remind them that the hand is still lifting. When they are lost, you remind them that there is an unchanging compass in the soul. And you do not speak this as theory. You speak it with certainty that has been tested. And that certainty carries more power than any rhetoric. In the end, you understand that the entire journey was not meant to lead you to outward success, but to engrave this truth in you that God is the constant presence. When you know this, you no longer live in anxiety, but in rest. You no longer chase, but live in sufficiency. You no longer search, but shine from within. This is the peak of spiritual maturity, where all questions are gathered into one answer. All paths converge into one point. All thirst is satisfied by presence. The final affirmation is not the end, but the door opening to a new way of living, where you walk each day with the awareness that you have never been alone, that everything that happens is held in loving hands, and that even when you do not understand, you remain at peace, because you know with certainty that the one who began the work in you will also complete it. This is complete rest, complete freedom, and unshakable evidence that God truly is with you now and forever.